What's happening, everyone? Hey, thank you so much for joining us on another Adventure Box podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the people in Iran. Before it became Iran, it was Persia. Before it was Persia, it was an unknown land, or unnamed land, just made up a lot of different people. Today, we're going to go over that. But first, our sponsors, that way, Historical Conquest. Thank you so much for supporting them, supporting us, because I'm the CEO of it, supporting Historical Conquest, so we can do things like this. So we put out these podcasts and help you through ancient history. We have hundreds of people watching these every day. So thank you for being part of this. Okay, now, and there's so much to buy. There's everything from curriculum, games, books, other things. Check us out online at www.historicalconquest.com. Now, let's go into the people of ancient Persia, before Persia was Persia. Now, last time I started talking about the Elamites. The Elamites are one of the first great civilization in Persia. So our journey begins with the Elamites and how their civilization actually became powerful. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that it was started somewhere, again, we don't know exactly, but the best we can take from like carbon dating and different things that were going on in the area, it's about 2700 BC. And they lasted till about 539 BC. Again, this is when, what happened? Persia became Persia. But even a little bit before that, you had Sumerian, you had the Akkadians, and then you had the Babylonians. All of them vying for this area, being next door neighbors with the Elamites and not very happy and not wanting to share the area with the Elamites. But luckily, the Elamites actually had the Zagros Mountains, which we talked about last time. Now, I'm going to give you a little map. Let me give you a little map so you can see what it's like if you're watching our YouTube channel. Okay, so this is, close, there we go. This is Persia, now Iran. Now, the territories or the boundaries were completely different. No, not completely different. They were different. So this is the best we have of where the Persian Empire basically was. Is basically most of Iran. But the Elamites were in this area right here. Now remember, this right here, mountains. It was the barrier that kept the Elamites away from the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Akkadians. But again, they were still in that area bordering their land. So you had a lot of different attacks. So the Elamites established their kingdom called Elam, of course. Look at that. So hard to think about that. But it included Susa, which was, again, the beginning of the royal road. Susa was down here. And the other side was Sadris, which was actually Turkey. Now, it also had cities such as Anshan and Awan. So unlike Mesopotamian city-states, which basically they often fought among themselves in the city-states, the Elamites were actually unified. It was like the first unified civilization out of no reason at all. Like, they could have fought. The Elamites, though, again, it was not all over Iran. Yesterday we were talking about how they were fight together. I'm talking about this is one people, and then you have another group here that would be fighting. But the Elamites were united. It was a united civilization. So they actually had a strong central authority, which is why they lasted for 2,000 years. More than most other city-states or countries or even empires during that time. So some of the things that made them great, writing. Yeah, the Elamites actually developed their own script. They could actually write. It was influenced by the Akkadians. Again, the cuneiform, the language of cuneiform, actually started in Akkad. Because you had Sargon of Akkad, who lived down here and then started to span his empire, and then died, and then it died off. But what they were able to get, the Elamites, was the ability to write their own script. So it was unique in its structure, but it was influenced by the Akkadian cuneiform. So next, what about the religious influence? They worshipped gods. So this is a polytheistic society. One of their gods was called Inshu Ushnek. Ishu Unikishnek. Wow, I probably butchered that. I'm sorry. But it's a major deity in Susa, and had their own, each one had their own distinct rituals. So you could worship this god, or you could worship this god. And this god you do it this way, and this god you do it this way. Basically everything's customized however you want it. Customized gods. Okay, now at the same time they also did have many conflicts. Again, they have land that borders with the Arabian Gulf or Persian Gulf. And so that was one of the things that the Babylonians or the Akkadians, they did not want to share those areas. So first it was the Akkadians, then it was the Babylonians, and then it was the Assyrians. They would come in and try to sack Susa. Sorry to say, in 646 BC, the Assyrians actually did it. They sacked Susa, and that basically led to the decline of Elam. Again, this area right here. So despite their fall, though, the Elamites left a lasting mark on the Persian culture, and also the Persian kings that would come later on. And then also, there are people that still consider them the Elamites, even though they're in Iran. But that's more modern day. And we told a little bit of that last time. Now, they actually have a good amount of Kurds in their area. What, again, I was talking about current history. The Kurds actually take over a lot of this area, basically around where the Zagros Mountains are, which is what Elam was based, or had a lot of. Okay, the next group was the Gutians. Now, the Gutians, they were actually in a different part of the Zagros Mountains. The Gutians were fierce warriors that would come down from the mountains, and they would sack Mesopotamia. This was over and over and over, and it was total chaos for the Mesopotamians. They wanted peace, or they wanted war, but when they didn't want war, they still had war because the Gutians would come down. Now, what's great about them, I said fierce warriors, but it's even more than that. The fierce warriors were on horseback. They would shoot bows. They would attack and then retreat into the mountains, and no one could stop them. They knew the mountains better than anyone. So bringing in an army to destroy the Gutians was pretty hard. So the Gutians were a nomadic people, basically dwelling in the highlands of Iran. They didn't build great cities. Again, they were nomadic. So they weren't like the Elamites, but I guess this is one of the reasons why they had the warrior culture, because as they were moving around, they were going to be attacked. If you were able to set down in one spot, you'd be able to build fortifications around you, and you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. So the Gutians had to be warriors. They had to get the essence of being a warrior. And so they lived in the upper regions of the Zagros Mountains. Okay. Also to know that around 2200 BC, the Gutians invaded Sumer, bringing back the Akkadian Empire. So Sumer was basically the Sumerian Empire. It was down here. The Akkadians took this over and then started falling apart. They started taking it back, and the Gutians came down into Sumer and took it over. So, if you remember, Sargon of Akkad was actually the first true emperor with the first true empire. Now, the Gutians actually did overtake Sumer, the Sumerians, Sumer, those in Mesopotamia, for a time, basically about a century. But the problem was is that they didn't have the know-how to govern a non-nomadic people. And so their governance was basically chaotic. And that led to their downfall. So Sumerians and the third dynasty eventually drove them out, restoring stability in that land. It's someone that comes into a land and tries to rule them. If they're different cultures, different ideas, one's nomadic, one's not nomadic, it's very hard for that group to take them over. Which is also one of the reasons why, most likely, what was his name? His name was, Timur. Timur and some of the Huns, when they came down, they couldn't take over and set up a government. They had no clue what the governments were. They were a nomadic people moving around as the Huns. And so when they came down, they basically just wiped out everyone. They didn't care. They just wiped out everyone that was going to get in their way. And then they went home. Mainly because Timur the Lame died. That's why he was lame. Lame! No, I'm just kidding. That's not why he's lame. Okay. So, some of the things, you know what? Nah. You can read about it in the textbook. Anyways, the next part, the Kassites. Now, the Kassites had the longest ruling dynasty in Babylon. Wait, but we're not talking about Babylon. I know. But they spread. The Kassites, so they were Indo-European people who ruled Babylon for over 4 centuries, from 1595 to 1155 BC. They had the longest dynasty in Babylonian history, and they were actually from, that's right, the Zagros Mountains. The Kassites, well, I should say they most likely came from the Zagros or just above it into the land and took that over. So they most likely came from either there or the plateau. Scientists are not completely sure because they were so spread out. But their influence was so spread out. But some of their achievements was interesting. They actually stabilized Babylon. They knew better than the Agutians. Again, that was 2200 BC. This one was 1595 BC. Now, so the Kassian was actually a little bit more established and could actually rule another country. And so that's why they were able to take over Babylon and then keep it somewhat stable. They stabilized that economy, that region. Effectively, they were peaceful in that area. And they maintained the status of Babylon for a while. Their artwork, now this is interesting. They introduced kudurero stones. Kuduru stones. Sorry, there you go. Which were carved boundary markers that contained land grants and legal records. What? In 1500 BC, they had stabilized land grants and records, legal records, created on these kuduru stones. That's just interesting to me. That's really interesting that back then they could have that. This is what? Right now, 2000, so about 3,500 years ago. That's pretty cool. That's pretty advanced in my book to a fairly primitive Aryan region. But again, remember, this is about the same time that the Mesopotamians were writing cuneiform, and they were writing, what are they called? Cyrus cylinders, Cyrus the Great, his cylinder, and creating the stelas and writing on them. So I guess it's not past the understanding that they could do this. And these are large land areas, but they would survey them as well. They had less technical, less scientific ones as far as I know, but that'd be interesting to find out. So the Kassites maintained strong ties with the Egyptians, the Hittites, and so they had influence throughout the whole Middle East. Oh, sorry, as what they called the Near East. Now the decline, their success actually started falling apart. They were eventually overtaken by the Elamites and the Assyrians. Why? Because most likely, like every empire, they spread out too fast and they get taken over too quickly. So they don't last that long. Okay, but they lasted four centuries. So 400 years. That's pretty darn good. And their rule showed how outsiders could integrate and contribute to the Mesopotamian civilization rather than simply just destroying it like, again, the Gutians. Okay, going forward, we now have the Medes. So we have, right, before we do that, the Elamites, the Gutians. Now, again, some died off, new ones came up, those type of things. And you had from up here, the northern Zagros Mountains, you had the, we just talked about the Kassites. Okay, now let's talk about the Medes. And this is the Medes is the most important one that I really wanted to talk to you about today, because this is basically what would create Persia. Okay, so the Medes. Finally, we come to the Medes, the civilization that sets the stage for the Persian Empire. Now, who were the Medes? The Medes, they were an Indo-Iranian people. So they were Indus Valley and Iran. No Mesopotamia. Indus. So the Medes actually had most of Iran. Well, they took over a lot more than that. But this is basically where they came from. And they lived in the northwestern part of Iran. So, and this is around 1000 BC. Their land included major cities such as, I'm going to butcher this one, but it's called Ekbatana, which is now Hamadan, Iran. So it's Ekbatana. Okay, now the rise of the Medes. In about 612, the Medes joined forces with the Babylonians, this is why they became big, and destroyed Nineveh, which was the Assyrian Empire. I don't know if I could actually find where ancient Nineveh is. Let's look it up. I think I found it one time before. Nineveh in Iraq. So this would be Nineveh. That's more of a province. Let's go with Nineveh. City wall. Yeah, Mosul. Okay, so it is actually, that right there is Nineveh. That is the great Assyrian Empire's capital. And it's destroyed by the help of the Medes and, what was it? The Babylonians. They killed off basically the Assyrian Empire. And so under King Cyrexis, Cyrexis, they expanded their territory and became a dominant power in Iran. So the Medes, they stretched, let's go a little further out. They were here, like the western part of Iran, of Iran. And they moved over, and they took over up to Nineveh, destroying it. And then they actually went a little bit further. But remember, the Babylonians were also there and did not want them to go too far. So that was actually combative right there. There was competition for the same land. Under that same king, Cyrexis, again, they expanded their territories and became a dominant power in Iran. So it's not Persia yet. So the fall of the Medes happened around 550 BC. The Medes were overthrown by Cyrus the Great. So he was the uniter of the Medes and the Persians. And they formed the Achaemenid Empire. The Medes didn't disappear, though. Instead, they became part of Persia. And the military, the administration, they all basically lumped into one. And this helped shape the history of this empire. And we're going to go more into it, next Monday. But let me show you this as well. Okay, so we're talking about... Oh, there we go. Okay, so we're talking about Cyrus the Great. He's going to come in. I don't want to tell you too much about what's coming on. So let's just end it with this. The Elamites, the Gutians. Oh, actually, you know what? I have one picture I want to show you. This is from Iranian tours, interesting enough. So if you want to look at who was in Iran or in the Median Empire or in Iran, Persia, you have the Media, So the Medes were up here. They actually came from around over here. You have the Parthians. So the Parthians actually come in afterwards. You have the Carmania, and you have Persia. Now Persia is a very small group until the Medes take over, and then Persia steps in their place. And the Medes stretch all the way up into Turkey at one point. So according to this, it says it's 678 to 549 BC. There you go. There you go. So again, the Elamites, the Gutians, the Kassites, the Medes, they were more than just an ancient people. They were basically the foundation of the Persian Empire and what would be built. Their influence can still be seen in modern Iran today. So it's like their language, their cultures, their traditions, their writing, all these things. The Medes had, or these groups that were in here had a part of this. Now, one other thing to note is, I have a question for you. I want to know what you think. Which of these civilizations do you think is the most fascinating? This is your active question. I have to give you an active question at the end of every lesson because I want you to actually think about this. Okay, let me know your thoughts on this. Put in the comments below. Send me an email. A hashtag if you want Adventure Box Podcast. There we go. We're going to start a hashtag Adventure Box Podcast. So try it out. I want to know what you think. Which of these civilizations do you find the most fascinating? And which one do you think you would have probably wanted to live in at this point? Again, you had the Elamites, who were very established, unified. So that's a really nice place. Do you want the adventures of the Gutians or later on the Kassites? Or do you want to be part of the Medes, who were this very powerful group that basically took over everything? I'd love to hear it. What are your thoughts? Thank you for joining me on this great adventure, this journey through Persia, ancient Persia, and basically this forgotten civilization. We don't talk about it much, but I want to do this. At some point, we're going to be doing the Arabian Peninsula and everywhere, basically. But at this point, I thank you for joining us for this episode, and we will catch you on Monday. So thanks so much, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.